Hello and welcome to part 3 of EML series. In this session, we will look into the modify statement. What modify statement does is it allows us to change the data of the entity instances. It allows us the standard operations like create, update, delete, and create by association. On top of the standard operation, it also allows us to use non-standard operations such as determinations, actions, using the keyword execute. Modify statement is executed in short form, long form, and a dynamic form, as we had seen in case of the read statement. Now, the syntax of modify statement is as follows. You have the short form, which is modify entities of a single entity with the operation that you have to create and get the response back. In long form, you can give more than one entity at a time uh, along with the operation to be created and get the response back. The result for each entity will be a separate and a complete response parameters you can get back for field and reported. As we have seen in the read, uh, on the similar lines, even modify allows us to create a operations table like what we had done in the read statement and pass that operations in the operation clause of modify entities. And this whole scenario is called a dynamic form. Okay, we will be using short and long form in most of the cases during the development of RAP. Moving on, let's look into the first operation, which is the create operation in modify statement. And how create operation works is that it will uh, allow us to create an entity. In this case, I'm saying, okay, modify entity, or I can say modify entities of a behavior definition and then say entity and the entity name. Uh, and then you say create from and provide the values there. Now the value that we have to provide during the create is a CID first. CID is nothing but a temporary ID that we are going to pass, and that's called content ID in RAP terminology. Now when we are trying to create any data, at the time of creation we will not be having any uh, primary keys defined. In that case, we just pass the content ID in the RAP framework, and the rest will be taken care by the framework. In the data section, we pass the fields that we want to give the values to, and at the same time you also have a control structure where for each and every property or each and every field name that we are trying to modify the value, we should pass that control for that value the control structure as uh, marking as on, which is nothing but okay, you are somehow saying the framework that okay, I am doing the changes for this particular field, in this case begin date. Make a note that if you don't give the control value, even though if you are giving the begin date, the data will not be saved in the database. Now, in order, if you don't want to actually give the CID value by yourself, okay, where the data might be more or something, in that case, you have another flavor of modify entity with an option of a clause of autofill CID. Same again, modify entities of so and so, entity name so and so, create autofill CID with. Now here create is from, and with autofill CID it is with, again the same thing. Here you can give the value hash as a value table, one or multiple records in this value table, but in each table you have to give data uh, and the corresponding field names with the values, and for this same field names you have to also mention the control structure as well. You can no need to actually give go and give the data line by line. You can actually say percentage data is equal to another value hash with the values that you need to put in. Okay. uh, so autofill ci, as we know that, okay, create from or uh, create with is a value that we are actually going to define. uh, as you can see here, we can give the create the multiple instances by passing multiple values for the uh, table that we have to create. In this case, you can go and create one more uh, entity of the travel, in this case with the values there. If it is successful, we will get the data back in the mapped structure. If there is any error, the normal error handling will be done using the final and the reported structures. Okay. Moving on, like create, it also allows us to create the association entries with respect to the parent entry. So uh, the association is nothing but um, two fields, two values that are being two tables that are being associated with each other based on a primary key. Now, the difference between when you are trying to create by an association, the difference between the normal create and the create by association is that you will see that there is a separate value of target that you can see here. If you can see, there is a target value there which will be shown to now the target value uh, is nothing but again a table that will have one or more associated entries. The value will be same: CID, data and control. The way we have here, like the field names will be CID, data and control structure. So these are the three fields that we have to give. But in case of address, these CID, data and control for each and every record will go under another field called target. So the major difference between normal primary entry parent entity and the associated entity is that there are two differences. One is that for the associated entity, we have to pass the CID reference field with the same CID as of that we are mentioning for the parent. So in this case, CONT-0001 is the CID reference for address, and that is referring to the contact CID that we have given, as you can see here, as CONT-0001. Okay. And then we will have the second field as target, and the target will have one or multiple data that we need to create. So in this case, we are just creating one entry from here till here with again the CID, data and the control structure that we have to pass on. Okay. Uh, if the entries are successful, if the system is able to create the entries, the mapped data will be filled and you will get the return data back in mapped. If it is a failed, you will get the field and the reported structure. Okay. uh, as can be seen, the target can contain more than one value. Similarly, even the from value of the contact can have more than one value. But remember that if you are creating more than one contact, you have to pass the corresponding reference for into the CID reference of the address uh, table that you are defining, so that the contact and the address records are matched properly. So you can create two contacts here, CONT0001 and one more with CONT0002 with the values that you need to define. But while you are defining the address, if I give here CONT0002, then this entry will be actually linked to the contact number 2 that will be generated with one address, and contact number 1 will be having no address created. So remember that point properly. Okay. Now in case if you are actually trying to modify, most of the modify statement that we use in RAP framework. We don't need to commit it because RAP framework by itself contains internal commit depending on the end of the transaction using its own logical unit of work LUW. But if you are trying to modify any entities from your report or from your class for that matter, then it is mandatory for us to give the commit entities similar to what we had in normal ABAP. There we had commit, here we have commit entities. Now commit entities majorly again depends on four forms. One is the commit entities, the normal one. You will get the size about. See, if it is 0, that means the entities, the commit was successful. You can again have a commit entities, as you can see on the bottom right corner here, that you can get the response back for an entity for a behavior definition that you are actually calling the uh, for the operations on, and it will give you the field and they report it in case if it is not successful. But still you can actually go and do a size sub RC check. So most of the cases we just use the commit entity and check the size sub RC and just display a corresponding message there. You can also have a dynamic tab created uh, for when you are actually using the dynamic modify, and do it on the dynamic table response by giving the dynamic table here. Again, the size sub RC is there. And there is one more type where we say the commit entities, you can actually have it in between begin and end, wherein you can actually loop through your mapped entity and do whatever you want to do. Finally, all these things will be looped. The complete loop will be done, and after the loop is done, the commit entities will be triggered so that the whole chunk of data that we are trying to uh, modify here will be committed in one go. Okay, that is how it is. So let us now look into the system on how all those things works for us. Okay, okay. So let us start with where we had left in our last thing. So we had done our read by association in the class. The same class I'll be using for the modify statement as well. If you don't know how we have actually created this class, please visit my last uh, part 2 of the EML session where I have shown how we can actually create this uh, class to actually get the execution done. Now let's start with our modify entities first. Okay, and I have again done some coding behind. We will just go through that coding. Okay, now it is pretty simple. We are saying that okay, modify entities of uh, this behavior definition for contact, and I am adding one entry contact with the data as say Shiny Michael Ferrero, date of birth, some email, and active as ABAP true. Uh, at the same time, you see, I have to actually pass the same field names in the um, control structure as well. Say, for example, I am not passing the field, the middle name. Okay, I'm not passing the middle name. I'm just uh, passing the first name and last name in my control key, and let's see what happens. Okay, now uh, what will happen is when we are trying to actually go and create a contact, it will go and by default during the create it will check the behavior definition for any determinations that is been created during the creation of this behavior definition. So when it works with behavior definition, we'll have to understand that, okay, there is a certain way that modify entities operate. In order to understand that, let me activate and set a breakpoint here. Okay, to set a breakpoint, you can actually just go here, be on the line. You can say that, okay, run and toggle breakpoint. You can do a Control Shift B, and the breakpoint will be set for you. Or you can just double click here on this blue screen beside the line number, and uh, the breakpoint will be set. Now I am clicking Control B, Control Shift B, and the value is now shown here. In order for you to see it properly, let me just verify, and you see this is where the breakpoint is set, and it says that, okay, the line number 113 for logon user so and so, the breakpoint is already been set. Okay, now let us try to execute this now. Okay, let me come on, console is clear. Let us go and try to execute. Now what will happen is, when I'm trying to execute, instead of it getting executed directly, it will actually open up the debug perspective. Here you see it has moved from ABAP perspective to debug perspective, and the cursor is still here. I, because I stop on the first breakpoint that it has got, and it will now allow us the same way that we have here in these buttons that we see here. Okay, step over, written from the chunk of code as a block of code that you want to move out of. Like if you are calling a function module, F5 will jump into the function module and F7 will get out of the function module. And the F8, normally they don't have F8, they have shift F8, which will run to the line that you had selected. Okay, if you have passed that line, then it will go on continuously. It behaves like F8. So similar to what we have in the normal ABAP debugging, F5, F6, F7, F8, similarly we do have it in the debug perspective in the um Eclipse as well. Okay, now what you can do is you can click F5 here. Okay, I'm just clicking, you can press F5 as well. As soon as I press the F5 button, you see the data is the control is now moved to this class, the the class of the behavior pool, which is uh, the class that we have used to maintain the code for the behavior implementation. Okay, so it has actually gone and it has actually called the calculate age determination that I had actually created. So it goes there, and let me just now press F6 to run it line by line. It reads the entity, and if it calculates the age, if you see, you can hover over uh, the uh, the variable, and it will show you the age here, the values there. So in this case, it has actually determined that LV age is 19, and then I am actually modifying the entities again here in local mode, because it is the part of the behavior pool. The contact entity will be modified with the update field as age. We will see the modify and update going ahead, but you see you can actually modify the fields with the update statement with whatever value you have to pass. I am just passing the contact ID here, the transaction key. Age, I am just passing what I have calculated, and at the same time you see again the control has to be given for age. The control structure has to be filled or marked with on, so that it is actually modified. Okay, so it modifies that, and then it comes out. Okay, and what happens is, once that is done, it will again uh, so it has actually executed that. It will execute the one more, we have just missed it by pressing the F6 there. we could have actually pressed F5, but it will also go and check the other determination that I have created to default the country as India if the country value is not been passed. Okay, now what will happen is if you want to understand what are the determination and actions that I have defined, you can go and just watch out part first of EML where I have actually explained the transactional app that I have created, what is the functionality that I have created. In of course in our upcoming videos or upcoming sessions, I'm planning to create one more um, playlist, a set of series of videos that will uh, allow us to go and wherein I will show you how you can actually create a RAP application using the manage scenario. Okay, so coming back here, we see that okay, we just do some write statement. Now, as I have told you that commit entities we have to use, I'm just using commit entities would have been okay here, but I'm just saying okay, if it is a fail, let me know. Generally, that this doesn't fail because the data is proper. Okay, you see that there is no entry in the field. You can actually double click on this or come here in the internal structure and just select this, and if you put it here, okay, it is not going, you can actually say failed, CONTRESP. Okay, once you have that value there, it will show you the values if any. Okay, and then you can just let us move on and see. Okay, so that is what it has done, and now you say that okay, the contact is created successfully. Let me go to my um, contact entity. Okay, and right click and see what we have there. Now let me refresh it and see if the record, yeah, you see the record is actually been created. Shiny middle name is blank Ferrero with whatever values we had given is coming here. And if we go and check the values, okay, it will it will show us the value what we had created. We said okay, shiny, but I had actually given Michael, but since I have not given the control statement, you see that the middle name value is not stored. So you have to be very careful that for whatever field you are trying to change the values, the corresponding field name should be marked in the control structure as well. So this was about the create entity. Now let us quickly see the create by association as well. Similar to create entity, it is similar to what we have for the main entity. You see modify entities create by so and so same name. Now I am here, I'm saying okay, it is Johnny Michael Pinto without any email ID. Okay, date of birth given, and the same all the fields I have marked as uh, yes for the control structure. The second part that we have to go here is create by association, and that will allow us to create one or multiple associated record. In this case, for one contact, I can create one or multiple addresses. I am creating two addresses here. Main thing that we have to notice is that if you see this CID reference is the field that we have to be very careful. It should be same as what we have here. The CID reference of address should be equal to CID of the contact, the parent one. Okay. Now, uh, and the same data, CID data and control structure we have to maintain for address as well. But for address, as it can have multiple entries for one contact, so we SAP RAP framework or has given this target variable that we can use to store multiple values of the addresses here. So in this case, I am actually adding one address here with some address of Mumbai, Maharashtra, and at the same time I am actually adding another with second address as Hyderabad, Telangana. Note that in one case I have given pin code, in another case I have not given pin code. Whatever data that or whatever field name that you are trying to change, this the control structure should have the for that same field it should have the marking done, otherwise it will not save, as we have seen in the last statement. Okay, so in this case what I am doing is I am just creating two values. Okay, at these two addresses for one entity. Let me quickly clear this and execute this particular statement and see how it works. So when it is done, it says, oh, contact and address successfully created. Let us see what happened in our entity. So for entity, if I refresh here now, we see that, okay, Johnny Michael Pinto with uh, inactive state has been created. I can go and right click to follow the association for address, and it has now created two address, one for Mumbai, Maharashtra, and the second for Hyderabad, Telangana. One I had given the pin code, other one I had not given the pin code. I had not given the country, but I have told you that, okay, the without giving the data, if the data is not passed in the country column, there is a determination that I have coded to fill in with the country as India. Okay, so it has now created two values in the address table as well. Just to understand the Fiori part again, it's the same thing that I am showing you here now. Okay, let me just make it a little bit smaller, and I am just saying, okay, refresh the uh, application, and now we had actually created one with Shiny and uh, one with Johnny. So these two have come here. Okay, Shiny is active and Johnny is inactive. Let me just for Johnny also make it active, so I can actually make it active here by clicking, and it has become active now. Let me go and see in my Eclipse for Johnny whether the data is properly saved, yes or no. Let me refresh it, and as you can see that the data is now properly updated in the backend database. Okay, so this is how we can actually link this EML statement. Okay, create and create by operations. In our next session, we will look into the modify with update and delete.